Chapter 9. The First Step of Half a Man Part 2. Ugh, I'm getting a little preachy here. That is also the duty of elders. How you sublimate it is up to you, but since they seem to be listening, it won't be in vain. Not only Sana but also Gushika and even Cheeto finished their lunch boxes and went to the forest. To catch pittos in the forest, you still need to know the location of their burrows. Let's start from where the location is marked. Only a small portion of the forest burrows were marked. They were concentrated around the borders of the plains, where they were relatively easy to find. If the forest pittos aren't hunted much, that means they could have lived there for a long time and become large, right? Sana said to stop them from going to work. Yes, I think so. Then maybe we should find a beast trail. If they've been there for so long, there must be a set path and a trail that's been made, right? Yes. But I heard it's hard to tell from above because of the grass tunnel shape. Perhaps you could do a survey of the nest. I was looking at the nests on the plains, and I was thinking that the entrances and exits are arranged in such a way that they don't conflict with other nests, right? What? Yes, if you put it that way. Ah. Yes, that's right. It was like that. Surprisingly, it was Cheeto who responded. Well, it was the same with the location of the den, but Cheeto has a good memory, Sana said. There are some things I'd rather forget. But let's hurry up or else. Let's start with the nest first. Sana said firmly. But, because then, we have to think not only about ourselves, but also about the children after us. That's how the map at headquarters was created in the first place, right? Yes, that's right. I understand. Cheeto seemed a little confused, but Gushika smiled and nodded in agreement. This reaction showed how much influence her father has had on her. I can't believe I'm looking for a nest in these woods. In times like this, you have to take it one step at a time and make sure you finish them one by one. At the worst, it's okay if all you do today is investigate. He admonished Cheeto, who looked at the forest and seemed to be in despair. The sheer volume of work was staggering when you looked at it as a whole, but in the end, you just had to get it done one at a time. If you rushed into it, the work would become a much bigger mess. Finding a pitto cave from scratch required patience and diligence, which was an important factor in all things. If this place is in the way of our work, we can cut it open and maintain it. But if you're leaving it, that's what you're intending to do. For the moment, they ignored the hunt, and knowing that they would alert the pitto, they began their investigation, and surprisingly, it only took a short time to locate the burrow. It was easy to find, as there were traces here and there, probably due to the fact that they had lived here for a long time and had no dangerous external enemies. In addition, they were able to determine the approximate location of the nest by fitting the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, taking into account the location of the nest on the plains. Sana gave them some advice that did not interfere with their experience, but since Gushika was a good nest reader by nature, she seemed to get the hang of it in the woods right away. Cheeto, who had been less than enthusiastic, seemed to enjoy searching in the woods, which were more rugged than the flatlands, more than he had expected, and he was gaining more and more experience, thanks in part to his good memory. His growth was quite remarkable. I think we've covered most of the forest part of the plot, he said. I'm sure we missed some pathways, but I think we have a pretty good idea of where the nests are. I didn't expect it to be so easy. But I don't think we'll be able to hunt all the burrows again. We wouldn't have been able to do this without Sana, so don't be so extravagant. Besides, if I hadn't done this research, I wouldn't have known how long it would take. I know. I'm sure pittos will be on the lookout for us, since we did a pretty thorough search anyway. Cheeto was right, the pittos were frozen motionless in their nests. But when Sana visualized them, he saw that many of them were moving a little further away. If it's the nest we checked at the beginning, it's probably safe now, so let's go around from there. Right. And it feels good to have the map filled in. I bet the people who update the map will be surprised when they see it. Sana showed the wooden map to Cheeto and Gushika as he said this. By doing so, they recognized the sense of accomplishment of their work. Yes, I'm sure they will. I bet it is. Yeah, I'm sure you're right. Cheeto replied a bit curtly, but still felt pulled by Sana and Gushika's smiles, and his voice was becoming more upbeat. Sana, I'm curious about that larger den that was by that cliff. Gushika was referring to the den, which was large for a pedo thing and also looked a bit new. But maybe this trap and the size of the entrance don't match up a bit? The den was nearly twice the size of the trap. There was a good chance they would be alerted and pass through that circle. We also have larger traps in the warehouse. Cheeto, you know that, don't you? Okay, I'll leave it to you. Cheeto ran straight to the relay base warehouse. Gushika looked relieved and patted her chest as she saw him off. Good. It seems to be all right. What? He's been avoiding everyone, so he doesn't go near places where people gather by himself. Gushika turned to Sena and mischievously stuck out her tongue at him. She is quite the scheming sister. I'm sure she knew what you were up to when you showed her the map and complimented her on it. I hope Cheeto will never find out about this for the rest of his life. Still, it was nice to know that Cheeto had friends like this, so Sena responded with a light smile. They had already read the nest and decided on the placement, so they started setting up the trap as soon as Cheeto returned. Although visibility was a little poor in the woods and the three of them were positioned at different heights, they confirmed with a light whistle that each was in position, and then counted to 3 from the starting signal and sounded our bubudas in unison. The ground rumbling of the pedos running away was so loud that all of them unintentionally shouted. Anyway, the trap bags they had set up swelled up a bit surprisingly, and the traps seemed to be on the verge of coming undone. Especially the biggest trap bag, which Sena was in charge of, was in a terrible state. Ha ha. Even Sena couldn't help but laugh out loud at the sight of the huge catch. He quickly approached and removed the trap and tied its mouth. And then... Whoa. Cheeto's screams filled the forest. Sena quickly dropped the trap and headed toward the voice, only to find that the trap bag Cheeto was holding was clearly moving abnormally. Something much larger than a pedo was rampaging recklessly, and Cheeto was being swung around by it. Moreover, a sharp, nearly 10-centimeter-long horn-like object was sticking out of the sturdy bag. Cheeto, let it go. No. If I let go, it'll get away. I said let it go. But... Cheeto would not let go of Gushika's hand despite her screams and yells. It was more like his hand had stiffened than a desire to let go. Coo! Sena quickly pulled out a working knife from his magic bag and spiritual thread guidance. The moment he connected the knife and the point to the rampaging thing, he threw the knife. Peg. Without a pause, the knife plunged deeply through the bag into the rampaging thing. Cheeto! Sena and Gushika yelled at the same time and rushed to Cheeto. The bag was already still, and blood was slowly seeping from the puncture wound. You idiot! Why didn't you let go of it right away? Apart from the harshness of her tone, Gushika's hand was gentle as she looked after Cheeto. Sorry. Relieved, Cheeto apologized honestly with teary eyes, turning to face Sena and giving a small bow, albeit awkwardly. You seem uninjured? Yes, thanks to Sena-san's quick finish, it doesn't look like it was caught in the corner, and it doesn't seem to be hurting anywhere. Well, that's good, but what is it? I think it's probably a queen, based on the length of the upper species. Horns in the pedo. Anyway, let's hurry back to the relay base. Yeah, that was definitely a queen pedo. I can't do much about the forest area, so maybe it grew up and turned into a demon. When they brought it back to headquarters and reported it, the guild official who seemed to be in charge said with a wry smile as he returned Sena's knife, which he had cleaned up. A blow to the vital spot, nice skill. As expected of Baragaru-san's apprentice. Your capture results are also quite good, and there is still some time before the end time, but unfortunately, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to end today's hunt. Indeed, it's dangerous for the kids. The queen pedo he showed them was more than twice the length of a normal pedo, but not much different in shape. But it also had sharp horns that had broken through that trap sack, and its teeth and claws were quite well developed. The problem was that the queen was not necessarily a single animal, and there could be larger, more ferocious individuals. Nevertheless, there was still some time before the end of the day, and Cheeto and the others looked disappointed. Well, don't be so depressed. The map of the forest that you and your team have updated will be used as a reference for the assessment of the danger, which will probably take place after tomorrow. Usually, it's just an extra pathway to a den, so it's only pocket change, but with something like this we can expect to add quite a bit. The kids just can't be bothered with the woods and stuff like that. They've done a lot of research. Gushika and Cheeto looked at each other and smiled, delighted that their work has been recognized. Their amicable relationship was a very funny sight, and it gave Sena a sense of warmth. By the way, I'd like to collect our equipment. Can I go into the woods? Yeah, if it's just you, it shouldn't be a problem. Sena hurried back into the woods, took the bibudas and tools out of the woods, and left them to Gushika and the others, and began his search. Let's dig one up just to try it out. The soil in the forest was humus and not well trodden, probably because not many people had entered the area. Range specified armored. Sena put the magic element on the surface of his hand like a shield, and he just plunged it in. It went in as if he was sticking his hand into a rice husk. As he dug out the soil and separated it more, he looked at the object and saw that it was a mass of less than 5 centimeters, like a small potato, like a white truffle. Oh, this. It is a kind of prosciutto tuber. It is a plant that accumulates magic element and uses its energy to grow underground roots in all directions. The amount of magic element accumulated in the plant probably indicates that it is in a pre-sprouting state, and to our surprise, it is one of the main ingredients of the extra potion. Please pick it. Or rather, pick and pick. Extra potion was a magic elixir that could heal even limb loss. If it was the main raw material, it could be expected to fetch a high price. It was the same as finding a treasure trove. Oh, an unexpected treasure here. Then, let's pick up something good. To prevent eradication, let's only collect items with high magical element density. That's right. Since we don't have time to dig everywhere, let's specify a range and store them in the spiritual thread storage. Relieved that Neyuta did not say, uproot, Sena looked at the underground reaction and surrounded the entire area of soil about 1 centimeter in circumference at the point of magical elements. He put them directly into the spiritual thread storage. The combination of range specification and spirit thread storage is really easy to use. As long as it is not resisted by magic element, it is good that even iron can be cut. Although it is only with Sena-san's magical element amount, you can do a variety of detailed processing. However, the amount of magic element consumed by the range specification is very large for wrought metals. Precision metalworking is a long way off, isn't it? Processed products, especially metals forged by human hands, actually had a certain amount of magic naturally applied to them that resisted range specification. However, if the amount of magic element was raised considerably, cutting was still possible, but if a person was holding the weapon or armor, the magic of physical reinforcement was automatically applied to the weapon or armor, or it was firmly resisted. The blacksmith workshop in the basement of Baragaru's house became the sample for these areas. Anyway, there was a large amount of scrap iron collected for recycling, so he borrowed some, tested it, and put it in a container to be thrown directly into the furnace to destroy the evidence. Because range-specified cutting can be processed freely and has a really wide range of applications. It's fun because you can even create things like 3D models with the magic element. Neyuta spent her evenings designing love nests with that magic. Don't mess with that underground quarry, okay? I know. I want something good anyway, so I'll search patiently. She was already shopping at the museum for potential stone materials. Since that was a former royal palace, the building materials used were all top quality. Well, you can try mystery building materials then. Another mystery series created by the first creator of Mystery Gold. Its name suggested that it was suitable to use as a building material, but its true nature was still a mystery. The prosciuttos in the soil were placed one after another in the spirit string storage by specifying the range. After collecting about 30 good-looking items, he removed them from the spiritual thread storage, put them in a collecting bag, and transferred them to the magic bag while dusting off the soil. It was a two-step process, but it was necessary in order to present the harvest in public. Here you go. Brushing off the dirt, Sena exited the woods and walked over to where the two kids were cleaning up. No, we're just getting ready as well. We're still hunting around here, so we're still good to go, right? No, we've had enough. Let's just get this over with and let's take a breather. You must be tired from all this. I'm used to it, but I'm still fine too. Cheeto's mouth curled into a smile, as if he was frustrated at being worried about. His appearance was childish, but it was better not to say so. I see. You're quite dependable, aren't you? But I rest when I can. It's important to be prepared for the unexpected. Cheeto's mood, which had been somewhat resigned and wary of Sena, was changing. However, the unapproachable and unbelieving part of him was still there. Sena and his team were returning the traps and bubudas to the headquarters base after some light maintenance. Of course, you could return them as they were, but if you did the maintenance, they gave you a fruit similar to a mango in exchange. This place is really well thought out. The fruit was a little acidic, but also sweet. After taking a rest while eating the fruits, they hurried back to the guild. In the morning, they had to move all together, but in the evening, they were free to return at their own convenience, and above all, they heard that there was a large public bath in the guild annex that could be used by guild members and staff. In fact, there were several public bathhouses in the city, but Sena had never been able to go to one because Baragaru's house had an indoor bath and because it would be bad for him to be seen with his body debilitated with a magic cold. Baragaru's baths are also quite splendid, but I have become accustomed to large baths. Starting from a maid's house to the Kamidake's several kilometers long bath, in a way, it might be the only luxury Sena had learned to enjoy. Gahahaha. You're back. Upon entering the auditorium in the morning, Baragaru, who was with the reception staff, happily approached Sena when he saw him. Don't tell me you're here to pick me up? It's my pretty apprentice's first job. It's a joke, but I'm a guild member too. It's one of my duties as a member to take care of the Pito boys when we're short on staff, and I'd like to check on them just in case. There are Pito boys. And girls, too. When you're a little kid, you're a lot like them. More than that, I heard there was a queen, but that's fine, just like a little boy. Anyway, go check in and take a bath. I supervise the baths here, so they're pretty good. You do that too. Well, actually, that's what I'm looking forward to. That's why I came back early. Gahahaha. Well, enjoy it then. After the reception, they gave you 2 wooden tags. One for the bath and one for the meal in exchange for a voucher. Oh, and I picked up some medicinal herbs besides the Pito. You want to make it the profit of the party? But the stuff you can gather around there is not worth much money. And what can be picked during a hunt? Baragaru, who had been laughing, froze when he saw the prosciutto Sena pulled out of his magic bag. But he immediately reacted, grabbing Sena's arm and dragging him to turn his back to the other staff members, glaring at them. I picked up about 30 of these. What's wrong? How many of those? 30 pieces. They were in the forest part of today's plot. Baragaru's expression fell, and he let out a deep breath, as if he had heard Sena's explanation and understood it. Oh! I see. So the queen was there to eat this guy. I'm convinced. But you sure attract a lot of trouble. What's wrong? The queen and king Pitos try to develop their magical organs by eating this guy. That's why they show up where the prosciutto grows, but that's not so important. More importantly, the discovery of this guy is going to cause a lot of problems. What am I supposed to do? If you want me to put them back, that's fine with me. Oh, don't worry. It's not like it's going to cause any problems for the boys, just that there will be a lot of other games to be played. But for the sake of prior arrangements, we don't want them to know for a little while, so don't tell those too. And you don't say anything, of course. Baragaru gently held his mouth and made a gesture of silence. Understood. After leaving the prosciutto in Baragaru's hands, Gushika led them through the basement. It's a real dungeon when you look at it this way. It felt like a real dungeon when you saw it like this. Gushika explained that as long as you knew where you were going, you would never get lost. Something like I've seen somewhere. The place they arrived at was similar in design to the Grand Palace, Tenyuan, the exclusive accommodation for the Renza royal family in Recepshi. The building materials, however, were quite ordinary, a degraded version of the entrance. Well, this one is still more relaxing. Instead of the kinky decorations, the hotel was quite chic and modern, with a combination of different colored stones and wood. On the contrary, this one looked more prestigious. Perhaps it was just Japanese sensibility, but it was pointless to worry about it, as it was the same at Jurai and the Kamadake. But it is a mismatch that the people here are wearing work clothes and leather armor. Like people who build houses that look like chalk palaces in the countryside. Ha ha. If I say that, I'm done. That's a kind of middle-aged man thinking, and an incurable one at that. And it's better than the baths at Tenyuan's treasure house. At least I'm not ashamed to go in there. The design looks exactly like it, but the decor is chic. I'm curious if Baragaru did that, or if others stopped him. I'm not going to give Baragaru any extra poking around. I'm afraid of his quirks. Big brother, this way. Before he knew it, Gushika was calling him Big Brother, but he felt somewhat embarrassed because he couldn't have this kind of connection with his sister Yoshiko first. With a wry smile, he proceeded to the back guardroom where Gushika and the others were. What? Seina stopped and stupidly exclaimed. The changing room was just beyond, but to his surprise, it was not divided into men's and women's changing rooms. There was an upholstered stand in the center of the room, but it was high enough for an adult's face to be seen. Moreover, no one showed any sign of embarrassment, and both men and women were talking peacefully with their faces above the stand. Hey, big brother, over here. Gushika was calling Seina on the men's side, as if it were only natural. Of course, Cheeto was with them. I guess this is the rule here. Well, I guess it's just a matter of generosity. I hope it's not a full co-ed bath inside. Seina gave up and headed toward Gushika and the others. Is this your first time at a place like this, big brother? Well, the place I'm living has baths. So you don't know about these either? Gushika pointed to a locker for luggage and clothes. This one has a magical crystal key. The one that isn't glowing is the empty locker. You record it with your palm like this, and when it glows red, it opens. When you put your things inside and lock it, it will lock. See, biometrics. I guess this is Baragaru's study abroad experience here too. Well, isn't it nice not to have to worry about valuables? He could put the magic bag in the spirit thread storage if they were not in public view, but that was not possible here. The magic bag was being used to hide the spirit string storage in the first place, but using the spirit string storage to prevent it from being stolen was a complete waste of time. Cheeto, you have to wash your head properly. It's a bath for us, so we have to clean it up. I washed it in the well this morning. Gushika would be in the upper grades of elementary school in Japan, so she was just barely old enough to still take a bath with her father. Either way, they didn't seem to think anything of it when they saw naked adults around them. You just got it a little wet, didn't you? Big brother, help me wash Cheeto. Yeah, I'll take care of it. Seina quickly changed his mind and started taking off his clothes. Wow! A sigh escaped from Gushika's mouth as she looked at Seina's naked body. Wow! Brother, you are so scratched up. Did you get caught in a stampede? To begin with, the people Baragaru mentioned who assisted the Pitto boys in the hunts were either young apprentice hunter-adventurers or retired old men with injuries. At Seina's age, he was just starting out. So it was more likely that the wounds all over his body were more accidental than battle-related, so Cheeto's judgment that he had been wounded in the monster's outburst was reasonable. Not right. Gushika's sigh was more like a sigh than a murmur, so faint that Cheeto did not notice it. Just like the special class of people her father knew. Gushika's father was an active hunter-adventurer. He was a highly ranked hunter-adventurer, but he also knew a top-class hunter-adventurer, a special class above that, who often came to visit him at home. Gushika often got to see these hunters and adventurers as they changed clothes. Seina's body, though still a bit slender and not quite back to full strength, had a very similar feel to theirs. As I thought during the work, he has been involved in real battles. All their movements were slow and consistent. Seina's body was just like that. Gushika was not mistaken, and the veterans around him were also astonished by Seina's body. Okay, let's go. Yes, yes. You're blushing, sis. What are you doing? Shut up, I don't make noise in the bathtub. Gushika lightly patted Cheeto on the head, and then, in something of a good mood, pulled him along with her, followed by Seina. Oh! They walked through a curtain that reached almost to the floor and passed through a narrow corridor about 10 meters long, and at the end of which was the bathhouse. The bathhouse was quite spacious, and above all, there was a spectacular panoramic view in front of them. Beyond the forest and fields, there was the buffer zone for pitto hunting. A large river crossed it, and beyond that, the forest of magical trees. But since the bathhouse was higher than the trees from their vantage point, they could see quite far. Unlike the soberly hued flora here, the forest of magic trees was colorful and looked like a beautiful painting. Isn't it amazing? That end of the road used to be an outcropping quarry, and it has a really high cliff. And that window pane is something special, brought in from the sky. I see. I've never seen a window pane that big before. The glass, which was almost as large as the entire wall of the bathroom, was so transparent that at first glance it looked as if nothing was there, and there was no fogging caused by the steam. If it was from outer space, it was also one of the strongest on the planet. And because it supported the ceiling as a wall structure, there was no need to build any pillars in the bathhouse. No wonder Baragaru was so proud of the size and the spectacular view. That glass is said to be the only one of its kind on this continent. I was really surprised when Cheeto and I saw it for the first time. They both looked delighted by Seina's reaction. The giant window tended to catch the eye, but the baths were also made of stone here. The stone here varied slightly, but it was a white stone with a slight reddish tint. The unexcavated interior was accented with polished stone, and the same stone was used in different textures and combinations of stones brought from completely different places. These areas were the same as the buildings in the city. The baths are the same as those in Japan, with the washing area outside. There was a long, narrow, footbath-like bathtub for drawing hot water, and you washed your body at both ends of the tank. There were wooden boxes of hard, creamy soap placed here and there for washing, and he was surprised at the quality of the soap. It had a nice smell that was faintly different from regular soap, perhaps perfumed. Oh! As promised to Gushika in the changing room, he caught Cheeto, who was being a pain in the ass, and washed him in every nook and cranny. Cheeto had not bathed very often, and the grime was falling off his body in a nasty mess, so Gushika and Seina were both half mean and half amused. After releasing a groggy Cheeto into the shallow part of the tub, Seina and Gushika washed each other's backs. "Is there anything itchy?" Seina asked as he washed Gushika's hair. Her still thin and slender body belonged to a child, but she was showing signs that she was about to become an adult. If I were normal, would I have taken a bath with Yoshiko like this? He was a little nervous about being with a girl, but Gushika, the female hunter-adventurers, and the atmosphere around them made him forget that. But then he suddenly thought of his sister Yoshiko and got sentimental. For Seina, who had a probability bias, the bathroom was a dangerous place, and he had never been in one with Yoshiko. He had been inexperienced in dealing with his bias, and there was a great risk that Yoshiko might be involved, even if it were only himself. Seina, I think it's safe to say that you are not washing her as a brother would. What? What are you talking about? It's the way you wash her hair. The way he carefully washed every inch of her hair, rubbing the scalp with the flat of his fingers and changing the way he washed each part of her hair and the direction of the hair, was very professional, and in fact, Gushika felt very good and was oohing and awing. This is directly from Kuriko and Tsukiko. I thought this was normal. Did you forget that those people were trained as Sita-sama's ladies-in-waiting? Oh! Nayuta's words were everything. Sito's ladies were perfect in every way. They knew everything, and they were the caretakers of the top class of noble people. And when it came from someone with that level of experience, even Seina's lack of experience was on par with the pros. At least when it came to washing, he used the best techniques. But Gushika is a girl, we can't treat her like Cheeto. Ho-hum. She's more like a customer. What? He suddenly felt a strong gaze and looked to the side, where he saw a group of female hunter-adventurers peering at him with bell-shaped faces from the privacy partition, looking at him with interest. You're pretty good at that, aren't you? Can we make a wish too? Gushika was making very pleasant noises while Seina was washing her hair, they later told him. No, you shouldn't have woken up such a little girl, she said. You're such a bad person. The women teased Sena as they approached, hardly covering their fronts. Sena tried his best to restrain himself from waking up, but in the end, he could not escape and had to open his own hair salon. Incidentally, the male members of the party of female adventurers, while watching the scene, were saying things like, "Thanks to him, we are happy to take a relaxing bath today." Sena and the kids had an unexpectedly long bath, but thanks to their early return, they were able to get to the cafeteria before the Pito boys came back and crowded the place. The guild has several cafeterias, and this one is the largest and can seat nearly 1,000 people. There is only one menu that changes daily, but it is known for being cheap and hearty, and most of the Pito hunting kids come here. He went to the serving counter, and they branded his meal ticket on the thin wooden board he had been given. "Come on, eat with gusto. Don't be shy." Her voice was loud and bell-like, as if she spoke loudly on a regular basis. A big, muscular woman who would make you say, "I thought you were an ogre," and who would shatter the image of elves as beautiful and delicate. By the way, she had a very pretty face, poured a borscht-like stew into an iron pot the size of a rice bowl, to overflowing. The pot had handles so that even a child could carry it without spilling, but it was clearly not enough for a child to eat. And the bread was a loaf or so in size. If you want a refill, don't be shy. "Oh, and you can have this one. You go this way." Apparently, the bucket was for the kids, and Sena was given an iron pot the size of a family pot, which made him want to ask if it was for his group. He was also given a loaf of bread twice the size of the one Cheeto and the others had been given earlier. "You can't be that skinny. You have to eat your fill and get bigger." Sena, who had just woken up from a magical cold, had plenty of time to spare, but it was a little hard on him when his eating habits were returning to normal. However, his power to make no apologies and, above all, his innocent, carefree smile, made him swallow any objection or complaint without being able to say anything. He understood that the reason why she encouraged people to eat so much was probably because of her body, but it would be sexual harassment to ask her about it. Anyway, he could only resign himself to the fact that this was probably her belief. He was later told that the elf lady was a professional helper for Pito boys and that it was common practice for regular staff and adults to avoid that time of the day. If you were unlucky enough to encounter her without knowing it, you would end up like Sena. However, there was an unspoken rule that children who saw someone who was appalled by such a situation would help them eat, so everyone got enough to eat. There's a limit to how much you can eat. Well, if you can't finish it, it's off to the spirit thread storage. It actually looked so good that he was going to store half of it while it was still warm. If he didn't have enough, he could take it out and eat it later. As soon as Sena and the others sat down, children came rushing in from the entrance like a big migration of Pitos. They were mostly boys, still dirty and looking like they wanted something in their bellies faster than they could work up a sweat. This is what I'm looking forward to the most. Both Gushika and Cheeto were undaunted by the amount of food they had been given, and they seemed very happy about it. You can only eat organs here, right? The internal organs of any animal required a lot of processing. It was a foodstuff only available here, where the meat processing plant was located. After a quick prayer, they began to eat. Religion existed here, and many gods were believed to exist. Baragara said, "There are thousands of gods in this world, so if you just say the name of one, no one will know it." Sena followed his advice and invoked the name of the founder of the imperial tree, Tsunami. "I see, it's delicious." The food at Baragari's house was excellent, but the stew here was also quite tasty. But it's a little over-seasoned. In a way, it was a little more seasoned than the food he used to eat when he had the magic cold, which was a sick man's diet, but right after a hard day's labor it was very good. The organs were quite different from the regular meat portion in taste and texture, but it had a unique and complex flavor that was more enjoyable than the rather bland Pito meat. However, since it was from a small animal, it lacked a bit in terms of chewiness. This was compensated for by the large number of vegetables cut into large pieces. And the cereal bread also had a surprisingly sweet taste, which may be for children. Organs are good, but again, There is not much variety of vegetables in this world. The basic principle here was local production for local consumption. A world that imported large quantities of food from outside was unnatural. Food self-sufficiency was the most important issue for national defense, and it should be maintained at more than 100%. Because of the sea of magical trees, we have a great variety of spices and fruits, which is the nature of the land. Well, I was surprised when there was fruit instead of vegetables in the stew. Oh, it's in this one too. There were a wide variety of sweet, dried, and unripe fruits in the stew. He just didn't notice it, but young unripe fruit was also in there as a vegetable substitute. I've gotten used to it. I'm the kind of person who can handle pineapple in my sweet and sour pork. Still, don't you miss Kariko's cooking sometimes? Kariko's cooking equaled Japanese food. It's no use begging for something you don't have. But the spices give it a curry flavor, which is my best friend. I'd like to try some of my preserved freshwater fish at some point, but I'd probably grill it first. If it's too earthy, I'll have to remove the mud, but that's impossible in the spirit thread storage. I also need a subspace storage with time acceleration. The best thing is a base where we can do many things, but if we are going to stay at Baragaru's for a while, we can rent a garden area and do some mud removal and drying in the sun. You can cooperate with Nana there, right? I see. I'll think about that. But there are places in this market that I haven't been to yet, so I'll take my time and go around next time. There are many meat shops, but there might be some fresh fish too. I'm looking forward to discovering things little by little. Yes, that's right. If you go to other places, you may find a lot of things. By the way, did you notice anything in the serving area? Oh, 3 kinds of stew. They were changing it up depending on who they were serving, so I guess it's the same as Nana's. Nana was a kobold, so he couldn't eat very strong seasonings. So even when he cooked, he almost always lightly seasoned the ingredients. Fruits and vegetables were often eaten raw. Nana is a demon, but it is reasonable to assume that beast men have similar tastes and characteristics. Yes, the other one seems to be the one without the organ meat. There was something that looked like meat, so it may be a religious precept. Religion or... The only thing I was warned about in advance was the prayer at mealtime, so I don't think it's too much of a problem, but I'll ask Baragaru later. That's better. But still, the more I look at it, the more amazing the amount of food is. I think I would believe it if you told me this was the venue for a big eating contest. It's okay if the taste is to your liking, but if it's something that doesn't suit your palate, it's torture. Glancing to the side, Gushika and Cheeto were already finishing up their meals. Cheeto finished his meal with about 2 bites left, looked from the empty pot to the serving table, and quickly got up to leave. Wait a minute. Gushika stopped Cheeto as he was about to stand up for a refill. Cheeto, wait here. With that, Gushika went to the serving line alone. Cheeto was a little disgruntled and miffed, but when she came back and he saw her bowl overflowing with stew, he was satisfied. Don't tell me, Gushika did that all by herself. She doesn't have any sense of moderation. If you ask for a refill, she will fill it up without question, so one of us has to go and split it. Be careful, brother. I don't think I'm going to go for a refill, but I wish you would have told me before we came here. That way they could have staggered the time or something. I forgot, Teehee. Coo. You couldn't complain with a real girl's Teehee. Once upon a time, Kai did it to Kariko and got beat up, and Dai, imitating Kai, was not sure what Sakiko did to him, but he had not been seen for about half a year. That was a forbidden self-destructive technique that a man should never do. Anyway, Gushika shared her bowl full of stew with Cheeto and ate it up with satisfaction.